You know, when I tell business owners to go where they're treated best, what I'll sometimes hear is an answer that makes a lot of sense. And if you're running a consulting company or an affiliate marketing company, if you're drop shipping stuff, that's great. Go overseas, legally reduce your tax. Great idea. But the exception that comes up most often is, but I'm running a tech company, I'm running a startup, and I need to be in Silicon Valley. People defend California as a place to get out at all costs, except if you're a tech company. I'm going to talk about that today in this video. Hey guys, I'm Andrew Henderson here at Nomad Capitalists. We're all about empowering successful entrepreneurs and investors to go where they're treated best, legal offshore tax savings, diversification through second passports, and finding new boom markets to invest in and even to move your company to. We got a lot of content, articles about that at nomadcapitalist.com if you want to learn more. But one of the interesting things when I talk about boom markets, you know, there are so many places around the world right now that are trying to be the new tech hub. Some of them are succeeding, and they are more developed, alternate tech hubs to Silicon Valley, places like in Israel. And there are others, like those in Yerevan, Armenia, that are pushing, and they have some companies going there, but it's a much smaller force to be reckoned with. And, we're always looking for the next big thing here, and the reason for that is that when something gets too big, people who are small, people who are just starting out, tend to get priced out. When I first went to Singapore almost a decade ago, I felt that while Singapore was still a great wealth haven, still a great place to move to if you have a lot of money, if you're the co-founder of Facebook or if you're the founder of Dyson, right? Those guys live in Singapore. But I felt, and it was a couple years later, it was later confirmed, that it's not a place where the small business owner can generally go and get the red carpet rolled out for them. They just don't need small business owners anymore, okay? They've moved beyond that. And nowhere is that more true, I think, than Silicon Valley. And yet, whenever I talk about, hey, get out of California, the taxes are a nightmare, regulations are a nightmare, everything's a nightmare. Heck, get out of the United States, get out of the Western world, everything is too expensive, too many regulations, frivolous lawsuits from employees, all kinds of different things. People say, yeah, but for tech companies, you have to be around Google. Now, this video is not, I'm not going to presume to tell Google or Microsoft or Amazon up in Seattle or any of the other big players what to do. Obviously, they have a system that's working for them. They don't need my advice. But I want to talk to the small business owner who wants to be in that ecosystem of Silicon Valley, because I've had a couple of these guys come to me, and I can tell you that need to be proximate to the Valley often gets them in trouble, and it's very hard for them to develop a good offshore tax plan. Even though they're willing to move overseas, that whole Silicon Valley ecosystem doesn't really understand offshore. And so what I say to the fact that you need to be around that is this. I'll tell you, I had a gentleman I was working with who has a relatively decent-sized tech company, and they are not in Silicon Valley. They're not in the United States. They're not even in the West. And he said, I've built a great team here where we're located. I built, a team with 30 really high-end people. And he said, if I were to go to Silicon Valley, I would basically be taking everything that I'm doing, all my employees that I've been so loyal to, and we built up the whole company, everything that I'm doing, I'd be taking it right to all my competitors' doorstep. And I think that at a certain point, it becomes counterproductive that while you may think, oh, my business is going to become so much bigger by being around Google, the reality is, to me, in this day and age, if you're a tech startup, you can use the power of tech to be wherever you want, that the networking is going to be less and less important in terms of pressing the flesh. And so what I say is, take the more certain wins, okay? If I'm starting a company, the first thing I want to do is bring in revenue, okay? If I go back to the dot-com bubble at the turn of the century, these companies were never focused on bringing in revenue. Now you've got a new, tech explosion, and you've got a bit more focus on actually bringing in revenue, right? Profitability is a bit more important than it used to be because we learned that lesson before. And so if I have profitability, the most certain thing that's going to happen is that profitability is going to be taxed away. If I'm in California, the most certain thing is I'm going to have to pay my employees hundreds of thousands of dollars a year so they can pay rent on their shoebox. The most certain thing is I'm going to be competing in a dog-eat-dog competition for staff where they can be poached at any time by any of the thousands of companies that are around. And I know folks who are in the entertainment business in Hollywood, and they start out with one of these big companies, and then eventually they get poached to come and be an executive vice president somewhere else. And I think the same thing probably happens in the Valley, where you're always at risk. Everything seems a little transient. And so if you go overseas with your tech company, and you know that you can get your taxes to a very low rate, even in countries, by the way, where they do have moderate or even high taxes, you will find free trade zones. You'll find 5, 10-year tax exemptions for tech companies. You'll see intellectual property regimes. If you're doing things that are tech-related and you have patents, for example, you can bring those there, pay 2, 3, 5% tax, because countries, this is a land rush. They're looking to compete for businesses like yours. But yet people stay in California and they're paying, double-digit state taxes. They're paying huge federal taxes. If you're incorporating with the traditional Delaware C-Corp model, you're going to be double taxed, right? So you're not really in control of your destiny at all. And then again, you've got the costs. And so what I say is, if you can lower your total cost of operating, taxes, operations, the whole lot, by anywhere from 60 to 90%, that is certain, okay? People aren't going to start working for your Silicon Valley startup for 42 grand a year tomorrow. But I have seen people, and I've helped people. For example, I had one guy, he went and hired 8 people, programmers, in Tbilisi, Georgia. I don't often recommend people go and hire in Tbilisi, Georgia. There's a lot of other opportunities there. But he found some great people. He said, Andrew, I'm paying these people 1/5 of what I would pay in other markets. So the Georgias, the Armenias, the Balkan region, Ukraine, Belarus, Central Asia, potentially up and coming, Asia, right? All these places you can hire at affordable prices. And for me, there are certain outsourcing centers that have become more expensive because everyone's gone there. I'm looking for the next one. I think that Eastern Europe, the countries that we mentioned, are good places to look. And so control what you can control is my message, okay? Being in Silicon Valley does not guarantee that Google is going to acquire you. I don't have any statistics, but I'm guessing it's still a 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 shot that one of the big players is going to acquire you, because in my travels all around places like Asia over the last number of years, I've run into a lot of folks who are starting companies, and I can tell you, with no happiness, by the way, I want everyone to succeed, but I can tell you the number of people who have gone back to Austin, gone back to London, gone back to Sydney because it didn't work out. They bootstrapped a startup from Asia, they lowered their costs, it still didn't work. That's higher than the number of folks I know who sold their company to Microsoft or sold their company to anyone. Now, the goal necessarily isn't an exit, but if you're not focused on raising money in the Valley, if you're not focused on exiting to a big player in the Valley, then really you've got a lot more independence to be able to be where you want to be. Now, I don't presume to tell every startup, where they should be based. I don't know your business, but here's what I know. I know that a lot of people are holding on to sacred cows, and I like to bust the sacred cows. I like to bust these myths that people have where you can only start a successful tech company if you're located in Silicon Valley. Because, by the way, yes, Silicon Valley is the number one in the world. There are other hubs where, maybe if you're in the Silicon Valley of Mexico, maybe you'd be better off going somewhere else where the laws are more in your favor, okay? So I want you to really think about it. If you are in this space, why it is that you need to be in the Valley. And actually just push by, I want to go to cocktail parties with folks at LinkedIn. This is not my space, but I do want you to ask yourself that question, because I can tell you in every other industry, people have questions of their own. And what I can tell you in all my years of being an entrepreneur since 19 years old is I'm always trying to push through, but I'm always trying to say, okay, how do I get past that? How do I find a way to do that? I don't want to pay half of my company's revenues out the door in taxation. That's going to hinder my ability to grow my company. And so that's why I'm trying very aggressively to knock down the sacred cows, find a way to push past them. I think this is one area where there are still a lot of sacred cows. And I also think it's an area where you're going to see more clusters around the world crop up. I know a couple folks who are in the film industry, and I know that some of the countries that they've gone to, and some of the states even in the US that they've gone to, you've never heard about these places in the film industry. And they're not producing Hollywood blockbusters, but they're actually making a living making films, which is pretty rare in itself. And they're doing it in places that are not Hollywood. Okay? They're doing it in places that aren't even the new Hollywoods. They're doing it in places that are so far off the map. And you've got countries in the film industry, the tech industry, where they are trying to bring people in by hook or by crook, and you can go and take advantage of that. In some cases, they'll even give you money. They'll even help you. They'll even, exempt you from payroll tax on your employees, exempt you from tax. They'll make it very easy for you because they want to come up. And so that's good for you. And I think if enough people do that, you'll see more of these clusters start to pop up, and you'll see more of an alternative to Silicon Valley. I think it's possible. That is why I think you should push past the sacred cows. How can Nomad Capitalists help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.